welcome back to the fourth bike in our Ultimate Sports Bike series. Today the focus is on Yamaha's YZF750. Over to Johnny, who's going to tell us all about it.
So the YZF750 from Yamaha, absolute beauty of a thing. Came in 1993, discontinued in 1998. Pretty much unchanged during that time. It was really the last of the golden era of carburetted 750 bikes, and what an absolute weapon it was. So the star of the show here with Yamaha was their 20 valve cylinder head, so 5 valves per cylinder was kind of a real Yamaha trademark, and they stuck with it right the way up through to the R1 as well, kind of their signature thing. This made 125 horsepower, which in 1993 was a massive amount of power, and in fact even by today's standards probably all you need. So if we're talking about YZF750 tributes, it's got to be the boost bike. So Ducati dominated British Championship for 9 years, apart from the 3 years, and it was the only bike ever to beat the Ducati here on British soil in 96, 97 and 98 with Neil Mackenzie. It's also the reason I still buy boost bars today in the garage. Okay, so like me, this is the oldest bike on the test, and I think because of that, it's probably the one that actually surprised us the most, because if we're being honest, we probably had the lowest expectations for this one, didn't we?
When we got the opportunity to test these bikes, this was the one that stood out. You know, it's that bit older, it's, I don't know, to me there's less appeal. Aesthetically, it looks a generation behind the rest of the machines, and personally, you know, I do not remember this bike being raced by Mackenzie, by Whittam, etc. Yeah. You can, and obviously you saw how potent it was in that situation. But for me, just didn't do it. But I hold my hands up. I'm pleasantly surprised by the package on offer, and I think the best talking point about it is the engine.
Definitely is the engine's the star of the show, isn't it? Obviously carburetted as well, like the Kawasaki. So you know, you'd expect it to be similar in terms of its characteristics in that regard, but Yamaha did something real different with this engine with those 5 valve cylinder heads, and I think maybe they didn't, I don't know, but maybe they took some of the learning out of the OW01 Superbike that was around at the time and put some of it into this. I don't really know, but what we do know from having ridden this around here a couple of over the last couple of days is that it's super flexible, that engine, isn't it? It's a lot like the S-Rad's engine in that it's got plenty in the mid-range that you can use, and it's got decent firepower at the top. So putting together corners without having to shift gears or keep it revving and working the engine is kind of like the hallmark of this, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it was so much more aggressive, powerful, exhilarating than what I'd expected. The punch out of a corner, it was there in your hand from the moment you turn the throttle, and it seemed to stay throughout the whole rev range. I mean, you're screaming this thing 12, 13,000 RPM, change gear again, good gearbox I should say as well, good clutch, and off you go. It just didn't want to stop, and actually, if I'm honest, I don't want to be derogatory to some of the bikes, but I mean, this compared to the ZX7R, that thing was just, I don't know.
It's another league, isn't it?
Yeah, this was awesome. I'd actually say, of all the bikes, this was my favourite engine of them all.
These were about 110-ish horsepower, give or take. 120 maybe for a good one, but maybe at the wheel they were around about that mark. So the Superbikes that Mackenzie and Whittam were riding, and Walker was another one, wasn't he? And Hislop raced it. But the engine in the Superbike, I was looking it up, at the time was like considered to be like off the chart. It was full factory. Basically, there was nothing remained. 150 horsepower.
150?
150.
That's mad when you think if the starting point was 110.
Yeah, which funny enough, if you take that gain in power as a percentage and apply it to something like today, you're looking at nearly 300 horsepower fire blades.
Yeah.
The engineering that went into those Superbikes was extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about those bikes, but what I do know about this is that cracking engine, nice connection with the rear wheel from the throttle. I liked all of that side of it. Also, another good talking point was the fact that when you were braking hard, and I should add in, the braking performance on this was also one of the best of all the bikes. Another thing that's really worth mentioning is how good this box would go down the gears. There's no slipper clutch in this. And we've learned throughout the course of this test that some of the bikes just really, really struggle when you go down gear, even using the clutch. You know, you get a lot of back torque, a lot of hop with the rear wheel. It's not a pleasant experience, but on this bike, it just seemed to suck it up. Had a really great clutch on it. And the braking performance as well was right up there. Probably, again, one of the best bikes for stopping performance. And these bikes have all got the same Brembo master cylinders. So the owners put the same pads in them, the same master cylinders. You know, the lines are different, the discs are different, the calipers are different, but whatever it is, these worked a treat, enjoyed all of that. The thing I didn't enjoy about it was probably the seating position. You kind of climb down into this.
Drop into it.
It's like the geometry is so weird. It's like
it's
you
very,
sit down,
very old school, isn't it?
Big old tank in front of you.
Yeah.
Reach out to the bars. It's not a chopper.
No.
But it feels a bit like a chopper. And also, like, even on this bike here, you know, I don't quite know why, but we maybe could have adjusted it, but the levers are set really low down as well. So you've got this really weird geometry.
Yeah.
And when you're riding it as well, like I was constantly smashing my knee into the tank and it felt completely alien. But that said, it still got around the corner just fine.
It worked, and that's the thing. That's. I mean, we said this is a surprising bike, and for its age, and I think that riding position is a really perfect example of that, because you jump on it, or you jump into it, and you're riding down the hill to the holding area, and you're kind of like thinking, what is this? It's such a big shock to the system of where everything is and where you are and where the foot pegs are and the handlebars, and you just got this massive fuel tank in front of you and you're sat almost like looking over the top of it. It feels like, don't it? You're so low in it, but you kind of get halfway around your outlap and you think, oh, okay, you know, this kind of works actually in its own kind of way, and then before you know it, you've completely forgotten about the riding position and it just works.
I mean, all of these bikes, you know, we tested, the owner's done a good job of giving them a good base suspension setup. This bike here, the front end, there are a few sections on the track, Charlie's exit in particular, some of the long corners, even Chris curve. I wasn't overwhelmed by the front. There was good feel, but I was getting quite a bit of chatter, which is probably just something of setup, and we're different sizes, different weights, you know, that's probably just me. Yeah, I maybe didn't have the best feel and connection with the front end, but I still trusted it enough to push. And the funny thing was that actually, that of all the times we've picked to come to Cadwell Park, yes, we've got the perfect weather for it, but it's also about a week before BSB. So we've had 2 days of like every imaginable class of BSB rider out on track with us.
Carnage.
And we're here on these retro bikes, but this held its own.
Did all right,
like I had a good run around with a few people on this here, and I thought, do you know what? It's quite humbling if we're keeping anywher near on something like this when you know they're on the latest and greatest. You know, this thing's never even so much as heard as a blipper or a slipper or a. Do you know what I mean? But cracking bike. Best bit for you?
It's got to be the engine. It's got to be the engine, and the fact it's so surprising. I love it. Who doesn't like a surprise? You know.
Worst bit for you?
I would say probably. Actually, you touched on it just then about the suspension. For me, that Chris curve, that long right-hander where you kind of cross over some bumps, don't you, on the way through, all the way through. To me, it felt the loosest of them all over there. I had the rear moving around quite a bit around there. Which was the only one of the tests to do it. So, but that's really just a setup issue. I can't really knock the bike for that.
You could work with this.
Yeah.
Do you know what it reminded me of? You know how
it remind you of me?
no, let's not even go there. But you know, nowadays, so like at the classic TT, for example, we're seeing a lot of this era of motorcycle coming about. Suzuki's got the XR69, for instance. I've ridden one of those. Felt not too dissimilar, although a lot kind of softer and a bit lower, but just a real punchy, meaty engine. And on one last point, the other thing I've got to say is, it's mind-blowing to think that after this, just the very next year, came the R1. I mean, talk about an evolution, a revolution even. What an amazing leap, you know, and Yamaha's had a great run, and it's really sad, I guess, to end on this note that, you know, at the end of this year, Yamaha's pulling the R1 from their range. But, you know, hopefully...
Maybe they'll bring this back.
Well, yeah, exactly, this could take its place, but hopefully in kind of 25, 30 years, we're looking back at the R1 and thinking, what an amazing bike.
What a lovely thing,
Yeah, I guess that's all we got to say on this one here.
Yeah,
Cracking experience. Never judge a bike by its strange aesthetics.
Strange aesthetics. No, definitely right. And I kind of think on the way home tonight we should grab ourselves a boost bar from the petrol station.
So on that note, that's this bike done. We've got one more left to bring your way. So make sure to stay tuned, subscribe, and see what we have to say about Ducati's 996.